Betrayed by the people I trusted most, I was written off, left broken. But I reclaimed my power, owned the company, and turned their worst mistakes into my ultimate triumph. Betrayal tried to break me, but it only built me stronger. Subscribe and join me on this journey of justice, self-worth, and fierce empowerment. My name's Amanda Sinclair. Growing up, I always thought my family had my back. But when my mom convinced my boyfriend to marry my sister instead of me, everything changed. Years later, at a party I threw, they got the shock of their lives, because my husband wasn't who they expected. I remember the day like it was yesterday, bright, sunny, and filled with the kind of hope that feels like it will never end. I was 24, fresh out of college, and head over heels for Jake. He was charming, funny, and the kind of guy who made me feel like I could be anything. We talked about our future, our dreams, our forever. But my mother, Gloria, never liked him. She said he wasn't good enough for me. Maybe because Jake wasn't rich or came from a fancy family, or maybe she just didn't want me to be happy. What I didn't expect was that she would go behind my back and convince Jake to marry my sister, Paige. I still remember the day they told me. It wasn't subtle. My sister smiled like she'd won the lottery, and Jake avoided my eyes. That's not happening, I told them. You can't just decide this for me. But they already had. My mom's words rang in my ears, loud and clear, "You'll thank me one day." I didn't believe her. How could I? The months that followed were a blur of heartbreak, betrayal, and silent nights filled with tears I hid from everyone. My sister and Jake's wedding felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. But instead of breaking me, it lit a fire inside. I promised myself one thing: I would rise above this, and when I did, they'd see who I really was. After the wedding, I felt like a ghost in my own life. Every family gathering was a reminder that my place had been stolen, not just by Jake, but by my own mother and sister. But instead of letting it destroy me, I decided it was time to rebuild. I threw myself into my career. I started at a small marketing firm, barely making enough to pay rent, but I was determined. Every early morning and late night was fueled by that quiet rage inside me, the kind of fire that can either consume you or forge you into something stronger. Slowly, I climbed the ladder. I learned to negotiate, to pitch, to lead. I made connections and proved I was more than just the girl who got left behind. Paige and Jake? They faded into the background of my life. I stopped attending family dinners, stopped answering their calls. It hurt, but I needed space to grow. Then, years later, when I was finally thriving, running my own successful event planning company, the universe gave me a chance I never expected. My new fiancé, David, was everything Jake wasn't. Confident, kind, and fiercely loyal. He believed in me, not just my dreams, but me. Together, we planned a celebration of my company's biggest milestone, a gala party that would bring together clients, friends, and my family. I told David about my past only after we got engaged. He didn't flinch or question me. He said, "Let them come. Let's see how far you've come." And I believed him. I sent the invitations carefully, almost coldly, to my family. I knew my mom and sister wouldn't want to miss the chance to see what they thought was my final failure. What they didn't know was that I was anything but a failure. Days before the party, my phone buzzed with a text from Paige, "Can't believe you're having a party. Mom and I will be there. Looking forward to seeing what you've got." I smiled, not because I was happy to hear from her, but because the time had come. This was my moment. David and I worked tirelessly to make the night perfect. The venue was stunning, glimmering lights, elegant decor, a live band. Everything I'd dreamed of when I was just starting out. I wanted this to be a night that would change everything. On the day of the party, I stood at the entrance, greeting guests with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Then I saw them, my mom and sister, dressed to the nines, faces full of disbelief. They thought I was just some small-time dreamer who got lucky. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. As the party buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, my mom and sister hovered awkwardly near the buffet, trying to blend in but clearly out of place. I watched them from across the room, my heart steady but my mind racing. It was time to introduce the real surprise. David appeared beside me, dressed sharp and confident. With a smile, I took his hand and led him through the crowd straight to where Mom and Paige were standing. "Mom, Paige," I said, my voice calm but clear. "This is my husband, David." Their faces froze. Mom's jaw tightened. Paige's eyes widened, and I saw the flicker of panic there, the realization that I wasn't the person they thought I was. David extended his hand, and Paige hesitated, then shook it, unable to hide her shock. I continued, "You both convinced my boyfriend to marry my sister, hoping it would break me. Instead, I built a life without you. A life I'm proud of." The room seemed to hold its breath. Mom tried to speak, but I raised my hand gently. "No need. The truth is loud enough." That night, I didn't just reclaim my dignity, I rewrote the story they thought was over. After the initial shock wore off, the whispers started. Guests who once knew me only as Paige's sister now looked at me with a new respect. I wasn't just a footnote in their family drama, I was the author of my own success. Mom approached me later that night, her expression guarded but softer. "Amanda, I didn't expect this," she said quietly. I looked her in the eyes. "Maybe you should have believed in me from the start." She hesitated, then turned away, the weight of regret heavy in her steps. Paige was nowhere to be seen. David squeezed my hand and smiled. "You did it. You owned every moment." And for the first time in years, I felt truly free, not because I had proven them wrong, but because I had finally proven myself right. In the weeks that followed, I focused on what mattered most, my marriage, my business, and my peace of mind. I stopped waiting for apologies from my family or validation from those who had hurt me. Instead, I built new boundaries. David and I made plans for the future that didn't include the toxic ties of my past. We talked about buying a house, starting a family, and traveling the world. Each dream felt more real because I knew I had someone by my side who truly believed in me. Occasionally, Paige tried to reach out, but I declined. I wasn't ready to let her back into my life, not after everything. My mom sent a few messages, sometimes expressing regret, sometimes trying to explain her past actions. I read them, but didn't respond. Healing would come on my terms, not theirs. This was my story now, one of strength, empowerment, and rising above betrayal. Just when I thought I'd closed the chapter on my family drama, an unexpected message popped up. It was from my younger cousin, Emily, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "I've been watching from afar," she wrote. "What you did that night? It gave me hope. You showed that we don't have to accept how others treat us. You inspire me." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Sometimes, the smallest gestures remind us that our strength can ripple far beyond what we imagine. Emily became a regular presence in my life, a reminder that family doesn't have to be defined by blood alone. Together, we shared stories, supported each other, and rebuilt the meaning of family. David and I grew even closer, our love deepening in the quiet moments away from the spotlight. I realized then that my power wasn't just in success, it was in connection, forgiveness, and choosing who I let in. By now, my life felt like a completely different story from the one I'd lived before. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. Instead, I was defined by my resilience, my ambition, and the love I shared with David and my new circle of chosen family. When the holidays came around, I made a decision. I invited Emily, David, and a few close friends to celebrate with me, not my old family. It was a small gathering, but it felt like the start of something beautiful. My mom reached out again, this time with a heartfelt letter. She admitted mistakes and asked if we could find a way to heal. I took a deep breath and decided I was ready to meet her halfway, but on my terms. Paige, however, remained distant and silent. I realized some bridges are meant to be burned for good. As I looked around that cozy room filled with laughter and warmth, I knew I was finally home, where I belonged. The night of my company's gala party was supposed to be the pinnacle of my success, a grand celebration of everything I had built from the ashes of betrayal. But it became so much more than that. It was the moment I confronted my past, owned my power, and rewrote my future. I stood in the elegantly lit ballroom, the air thick with anticipation. The murmur of the guests was a gentle hum beneath the smooth jazz playing softly in the background. My heart raced, but not with nerves, with a quiet, fierce confidence. Years of pain, of feeling invisible, of being second best to my own sister, had all led to this night. David, my husband and the man who had stood unwaveringly by my side, squeezed my hand gently. "Ready?" he asked, his eyes warm and steady. I nodded. More than ever. The door swung open, and my mother, Gloria, and sister, Paige, entered together. Their eyes immediately sought me out. I saw the flicker of shock, confusion, and something I recognized as fear. They had spent years mocking me, belittling my dreams, and trying to clip my wings, but tonight, the tables had turned. I stepped forward to greet them, not with bitterness, but with the calm dignity I had fought so hard to reclaim. "Mom." "Paige," I said clearly, "thank you for coming." Mom's lips tightened. "We wouldn't miss it," she said coolly. Paige forced a smile but didn't say a word. I gestured toward David. "This is my husband." The room seemed to hold its breath. David extended his hand politely. Paige hesitated but shook it, her eyes wide and unreadable. Mom's gaze narrowed. "So you married up," she said, the sting clear. David's jaw clenched, but he held himself with grace. "Amanda and I built this together." I felt a swell of pride. For so long, I'd let their judgment define me. No more. Then, the moment I'd planned for years, I pulled out the folder of documents I had with me, contracts, ownership papers, financial statements, proof that I owned the company Jake had abandoned and Mom and Paige had tried to dismiss as insignificant. "This company," I said, raising my voice just enough for the room to listen, "wasn't some luck. It was built on hard work, determination, and a refusal to give up, even when my own family doubted me. The very company your son-in-law walked away from, Mom. The company I now own." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mom's face paled, Paige's composure cracked for a moment before she masked it with forced indifference. "You thought you could break me by stealing Jake from me," I continued, "but I wasn't broken. I was becoming stronger." The years of humiliation, the sleepless nights, the lonely holidays, all led to this moment of triumph. I was no longer the girl who lost her boyfriend to her sister. I was Amanda Sinclair, a woman who refused to be defined by betrayal. After the speech, many guests came up to congratulate me. Some admitted they had underestimated me. Others said they were inspired by my resilience. David stood by my side, whispering, "You're incredible." I smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Days later, Mom sent a letter, admitting her mistakes and asking for forgiveness. It wasn't easy to read, but I responded, not with anger, but with boundaries. I told her forgiveness was possible, but only if she respected the woman I'd become. Paige never reached out again. But that was okay. Some wounds don't heal, and some people are meant to stay in the past. I found new family and friends like Emily, who reminded me that love isn't just blood, it's who shows up, who supports you, and who lifts you up. My life had come full circle, from betrayal and heartbreak to empowerment and justice. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: no matter how deeply someone tries to cut you down, you have the power to rise. To reclaim your dignity. To build a life that makes you proud. This isn't just my victory, it's a victory for anyone who's ever been doubted, underestimated, or betrayed. It had been 6 months since the gala, the night everything changed. The night I finally took back my life from the hands of betrayal and family drama. And yet, even now, I could still feel the echoes of those moments pulsing through me like a steady heartbeat, a reminder of how far I'd come. Every morning, as the sun poured gold through my bedroom window, I'd wake up with a quiet sense of gratitude. Not for the wealth I'd amassed or the company I'd built, although those were incredible achievements. No, my gratitude ran much deeper. It was for the strength I'd discovered within myself, a strength that no one could ever take away. The path here had been far from easy. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd ever truly escape the shadow of my family's judgment. The memories of my mom's cold words, Paige's sneering smiles, and the ache of being left behind felt like chains at times. But those chains shattered the moment I stopped letting their opinions define me. Owning the company was more than a business victory, it was a symbolic reclaiming of power. The very company my husband had walked away from, a company my family tried to dismiss and forget, was now a testament to my grit and determination. David had been my rock throughout the entire journey. When others doubted me, when the betrayal cut deepest, he never wavered. I'd once feared love would betray me, but he proved me wrong. He didn't just stand by me, he stood with me, fighting for our future. Our marriage was a sanctuary, a place where I could be vulnerable without fear, ambitious without judgment, and strong without pretense. Together, we dreamed about the life we wanted, a house filled with laughter, perhaps a family of our own someday, and adventures around the world. But beyond personal happiness, I realized my story was bigger than me. It was a story of survival, yes. But also a story of redemption and empowerment, for anyone who had ever been belittled or cast aside. I made it my mission to use my platform to lift others, to share stories like mine that showed strength could rise from the darkest places. That's when I founded the Sinclair Foundation, aimed at supporting women who faced betrayal, abuse, or were simply overlooked and underestimated. We provided scholarships, mentorship, and safe spaces for women to rebuild their lives and reclaim their power. Every letter, every call from a woman who said my story gave her hope, was a reminder that my journey wasn't just personal, it was profoundly communal. I kept some ties to my family, cautiously and on my own terms. Mom and I met a few times, each conversation slow and tentative, layered with the years of hurt and regret between us. Forgiveness was a road we were only beginning to travel, but I no longer felt pressured to force it. Paige remained a closed chapter, a reminder that not everyone deserves a place in your future. Business was booming. The company expanded into new markets, innovated products, and attracted talented women leaders who shared my vision for a fairer, more compassionate corporate world. I hired Emily, my cousin, whose support had been one of my saving graces, as my right hand in philanthropy. The boardroom battles, the tough negotiations, the late nights working towards success, none of it felt like a burden anymore. It felt like purpose. One afternoon, sitting in my corner office overlooking the city skyline, I reflected on the woman I'd been, the scared, uncertain girl who once lost her boyfriend to her own sister. The girl who was told she'd never make it. The girl who was banned from her own family gatherings. And then I looked at the woman I had become, confident, powerful, and unapologetically herself. I smiled to myself. Life hadn't been fair. But I was fair to myself. And that made all the difference. Not every day was perfect. Healing was messy and nonlinear. There were moments of loneliness and doubt. Sometimes, old scars would sting unexpectedly, triggered by a forgotten memory or an unkind word. But I learned to be gentle with myself. Therapy helped me unpack the complicated emotions, the anger, the sadness, the loss. I discovered that healing wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about integrating it into a narrative where I was the hero, not the victim. I also found strength in community. The Sinclair Foundation gatherings became like family reunions, groups of women sharing stories, encouraging each other, and building new bonds. Those connections reminded me that family can be chosen, built on respect and love rather than blood alone. And slowly, my mom and I began to find common ground. Our conversations remained cautious but honest. We talked about mistakes, regrets, and hopes for the future. I shared my pain, she shared her remorse. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but the door was no longer closed. Forgiveness felt less like surrender and more like freedom. There were times when I was tempted to look back, to wonder what if. What if I had believed in myself sooner? What if I hadn't let their words hurt me so deeply? But those questions only distracted from the power of now. I had learned that self-worth is not granted by others, it is claimed from within. No longer did I seek approval from those who doubted me. Instead, I measured my worth by my own standards, my courage, my compassion, and my integrity. And as my story spread, I realized I wasn't alone. So many women had faced betrayal and loss, but found their way back to themselves. This gave me a mission, to be a beacon of hope. To prove that even when the people closest to you try to break you, you can rise higher than they ever imagined. David and I planned our first vacation since the gala, a trip to the coast, where the ocean stretched wide and endless, a symbol of all the possibilities ahead. One evening, sitting on the balcony of our seaside cottage, David took my hand. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. I looked out at the horizon, the waves glittering in the moonlight. "I am," I said. "Because I stopped fighting who I was supposed to be, and started living who I am." He smiled, and I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. No longer was I the girl who lost her boyfriend to her sister. I was Amanda Sinclair, a woman who had taken control of her life, her future, and her destiny. And this was only the beginning. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or betrayed, know this: your story isn't over. You have the power to reclaim your life, rebuild your dignity, and redefine your future on your own terms. Sometimes, the deepest wounds become the source of our greatest strength. And when you rise, you don't just change your life. You change the world around you. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Whether it was my mom's deception or my sister's betrayal, I learned that true power comes from within, from owning your worth, standing tall, and never letting anyone else write your story. If you've ever felt underestimated or crushed by those you loved, know this: your comeback is waiting. Drop a comment, share your story, and please subscribe, because together, we rise stronger, unstoppable, and unbreakable. Thank you for being part of this journey. I read every message, and your strength inspires me every day.